Good morning, everyone. And we are coming to the end of 2020 here. Um, I'm not going to do a very long show today. I want to do some sketching on the bad guys ships for Bellatrix Rising. We've been doing a lot of work on all of the other things going on for Bellatrix Rising, and so wanted to actually kind of get an idea of what the bad guys ships look like. So we're going to do that real quickly, but we're not going to spend a lot of time today on this. So I've just got a white canvas here. I'm going to take just a normal pencil here, and we'll just take this pencil, right? And we're just going to kind of think it through. One of the things I really want to do is, think about the dynamics of what we've got. Let's first clean the monitor, because we've got a lot of junk on the monitor here, dirt and dust that gathers, as monitors are wont to do. So we'll clear that real quick. We aren't doing warm-ups because the May line is still messy and will be for the remainder of the year. Ha 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 ha. I think I'm funny. Okay. And now when I think about the ships that we are talking about here, I had two distinct designs that I once did. And one of the things I always want to think about is you want to be able to identify that it's a bad guy ship really quickly. So I don't want it to look similar to the good guy ships. I want it to look distinctly different, but it's still going to have all of the same logics. So I actually kind of want to do like a half dish sort of concept. Very similar to, like the half dishes of Star Trek. But instead of putting things up here like they were on Star Trek, this would be where the gravity controls are, for projecting the gravity sphere and stuff like that, because it's got to have the same technology as our other guys. So then I'm going to put sort of like a castle design back here with a bridge. Kind of looking. This is a top-down view, by the way. So like a bridge up here. And then I'm going to put the gravity sensor way to the back like this. It gives it more like a stingray effect. One of the other things I kind of like is maybe wings of some sort. Wings are important in space. They aren't important in space. But I'm thinking something like this. Just a rough concept and idea here. And then from the front view, kind of looks like this with the bridge castle in the back here and stuff. And then that tail coming out the back there. And the wings can come down like this. And it gives it an aggressive look. And these can be multi-weapon purpose pods. Hey, Donald, how you doing, man? How was your holiday? Was it good? And we're going to kind of do this. That comes down like that. But these would be hard points for weapons if we need them. The aggressive sort of stance here. And we'll do this. That's the other thing we need to remember to do, is engines. The engines in this universe need to be separated from the spacecraft so that they don't radiate the crew. So the engines will sit back here. Uneventful's not bad. I mean, there have been a number of Christmases in my past that I was kind of like, well, that was eventful. So I actually am all about uneventful. And then we'll do this here like this. And the wings like that. There we go. Just like that. There. There we go. So this is sort of a thought process I was having. So, originally the bad guys were known as the Confederacy. I felt like that was either a little strange or a little too spot on or a little too. It led itself to too much baggage. So I'm going to rename it to the Commonwealth. Sort of a better structure. This is a Commonwealth ship. So we'll put the weapons triangles on it too. Like that. This spaceship was cool. I've never seen Midnight Sky. That sounds interesting. What's it? So the movie apparently is boring. This is fine. There have been a number of movies that I have watched where other people thought they were boring. Some people thought they were boring, and okay. That I don't know. I sometimes think I'm easily entertained because I sometimes don't find these things boring, and that's okay. I think that's fine. So what I'm doing here is now I'm just refining my design. Oh, that's fair. George Clooney's cool. I dig George Clooney. He's a neat guy. All right. So this is a Commonwealth ship. Probably Commonwealth in sort of, I don't know. It seems like this would be a destroyer, maybe a cruiser of some sort. But the Commonwealth are going to have these half dishes on the front, which allow them to project the black hole in front of it so that it can also move along. A couple of engine pods in the back. Some wingy things on the side for carrying weapons and hardpoints. Which means to me that what that says to me is that there will be smaller Commonwealth ships that would just be this. Maybe with an engine pod sticking out to either side. And that would be the entire thing. There wouldn't be wings. Or maybe they would have launchers or something like that mounted on the sides on arms. The wings aren't necessarily a thing. Definitely giving some thought to this. Just like that. More of a stingray effect. We're going to run into Commonwealth ships from time to time in our story, so I wanted to make sure I knew what they looked like. And I wanted them to look significantly different from the Unity ships, but I didn't want them to look so different that they were obviously alien or something like that. They still would have sort of the elements that we would see in a Commonwealth ship. Good morning, Luna. That's all right, Luna. These are short shows today, not this week. I'm in the process of tearing up my office so that we can clean it up so that we can get it all ready for 2021. And that means that I don't have access to the main line. Half this stuff over here is not working. To boot, I'm in the middle of writing, so there's not a lot of drawing at this moment. I finished my cast picture, which now gives me the last piece that I really needed to visualize in my head characters talking to each other. I've been writing out their personalities and things like that, but for me, I don't click in until I've seen the picture. It's just the way it is, the way it works with me. So today we're just doing a quick rough sketch of what a Commonwealth ship looks like. This is a Commonwealth ship that we're doing here. These are the bad guys of the story. This is probably a Commonwealth cruiser of some sort. It's big. But yeah, so I wanted to kind of get the elements that we've got kind of going for it. And sort of get an idea of what Commonwealth ships would look like. And before we start building these in 3D and stuff like that, it's also possible at some point pretty soon I might actually be able to get a 3D printer. And if that does happen, then I'll be able to print these guys and we'll be able to sit there and go, pew, 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 pew. That's important. That's a very important thing to do in life. And that's critical. So, good morning, Brent. There's a whole bunch of us here today. So, yeah, so we've got ourselves a Commonwealth cruiser here, at least the sketch of one. I might have to go refine it and things like that, and we'll have to see how that works. I want to kind of, like a lot of things, I want to brew on it, kind of think about it, and kind of ponder it out. Right? If I get a 3D printer, then I will just disappear. My shows stop magically. But yeah, I mean, a 3D printer sounds like a lot of fun. I've been listening to how Brent's going with his. And, you know, it's where I kind of got the... I've got a little bit of Christmas money. Not a lot, but a little bit. So it might take me a couple of months. I may have to save. So we'll have to see. But there's been great rumblings amongst here about the idea of getting a 3D printer, so we'll have to see how that works. I'm thinking of getting a Anycubic Photon S. They seem to be pretty decent, and Anycubic makes a nice eco-safe resin, which I kind of like. So that's my thought. Haven't quite figured it out, but that's my thought at this moment. So we'll see. We'll see how that works. Hopefully, if all works well. See, any time other than 2020, I would have just probably said, hey, Brent, print these out. But then Brent can't ever bring them over, and I can't ever go over and get them. So I was like, oh. But that's all right. I kind of want my own anyway, because we do minis and things like that, and that's a thing. We'll just print minis. We'll print a whole bunch of minis. It'll be great. So that's where we are. At this point in time, so we're looking at the Commonwealth. This is the bad guys of the comic. We're kind of trying to design their cruisers and see what they look like. I like the idea that they kind of look like a stingray in a way. Yes. Brent's like, I can take them to you. I feel like the resin hood ornaments would, like, ultimately break off. But I guess if you have a printer, you'll just print a new one. So there's always that. That's totally fine, Brent. All I was saying was I've got Christmas money headed my way, I think, in theory. And so if I do have Christmas money, then I will be getting a 3D printer. And that is the battle plan. I'm going to get probably an Anycubic Photon S. And that's the battle plan at the moment. I don't know. But, you know, it depends. It depends on how things go. In the household, I am the last person on the chain. So, and for good reason. So we'll have to see if there's anything left over after all is said and done. If not, that's fine. I'll put it into a little savings account, and probably by February or so, I'll be able to pick one up. Either way, before then, we still have a lot of spaceships to draw and build in 3D and stuff like that. That's what I thought too. As far as resin printers go, what I've been hearing is that the Photon's a good printer and a relatively cheap one. I was pondering the idea of working in getting a filament, but I want to do minis more than anything else. I want to do minis. And so no matter what, it just seems like it'd be a bad idea to get a filament printer for minis because they just don't have the fine detail. And so I know you can print for me, my friend. And this is not to say that I'm just, it's 2020. So I just posted to my patrons that in 2021, I don't know if I will be able to table. I don't think any of us are going to be able to table. I don't think there's going to be that many conventions. We'll have to see. I mean, I'd like to think that there will be conventions, but we hope for the best and plan for the worst. And that's the way life is. So my thought is for 2021, we're going to build stock. There you go. Hat ornaments. So, for 2021, I think my battle plan is going to be to build stock for tabling in 2022. We spent 2020 world building and coming up with a universe of which that I can use and kind of work out. Yes, I didn't actually understand what you were headed for with the Lakewood thing. What was the concept of that? Because I saw it, and I didn't understand what was going on there. So, I'll need just a like a one sentence push as to what you were hoping on that one. So, anyway, 2021, my whole battle plan is to start building a stock of Bellatrix Rising things, bookmarks, and, of course, obviously, issues to be sold, things like that, so that we could start kind of gathering stock and getting to a point where where we're ready to table in 2022. I think that by 2022, everything will be back to as normal as we're going to ever get post-COVID. So I feel like what we can do is set it up so that I'm ready to go. I've got stock in a box that's ready to be put on a table. We've got some lights to blink on the table because I think that's a very important thing. But I also kind of want to build control panels or something. A pancake printer. You know, pancake printers could be cool, though. I'm just saying. Oh, gotcha. That's what I've got. That's what it was. I was trying to... I don't know. I get a lot of... Depending on who it is, I get a lot of weird links. And I'm not always sure I understand what they want me to do with it. Yeah, that should be fun. So, yeah, pancake printers would rock. Think about that. That'd be so cool. I want a pancake printer. Okay, I don't want a pancake printer enough to print pancakes. To print pancakes. I mean, I think it'd be a lot of fun, and I would enjoy it a whole lot, but I don't think that that's necessarily a thing I want to... Right now I want pancakes. Luna's like got us all hooked on the idea of pancakes. And there is that. Oh, well. But yeah, so back to... so I have seen the house 3D printers that extrude with concrete. That's pretty cool. I mean, the idea that you can just set up a 3D printer and then print the house, you know, overnight, and poof, the next morning you have a house. That's really nifty. I mean, that's pretty cool. I feel like there's hardware pieces, though, to houses that you can't just build the whole house out of concrete. Not that I have anything against concrete per se, but like, you know, you'd want something to allow you to affix things to the wall. So I feel like there should be hardware, like, if nothing else, just joists that you drop into the concrete. So you need, for a house, I feel like you need not just a 3D printer with extruding concrete, but a robot in there. So as the printer goes along, the robot just goes doop, 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 and drops little metal hooks or whatever into the concrete. And then the printer comes around and prints the next layer, and then it just sandwiches these hooks into the wall. And the ship takes structural damage. Right, of course they only do the outer walls, but in order for... I mean, I like the thought process of some industrial machine, right? It's got a concrete extruder and then like two arms and hoppers, you know, robotic arms. So as it goes along the wall, it's putting down concrete, and the arms are putting in like latches or things like that, whatever it needs to settle into the concrete so that you can do various things. There would have to be, you know, some kind of... I think there's a way that you could have just this robot with two arms and an extruder, and the extruder just extrudes, and the arms are putting things in as it goes along. I think that'd be kind of cool. Just a second. Yep. And that's exactly what we're talking about, Donald, is they've got these great printers, effectively, that print concrete. And I think that's awesome. I mean, you know, it's so funny. Every time we talk about things like this, I think of my father's infamous statement he likes to make all the time, which was in the 60s, they were talking about computers and how these computers will change the world. And not you, and he thought, okay, so it can add and subtract faster than me. How is that going to change the world? He loves to tell that story as a cautionary tale to all of us who see some new technology and go, oh, okay, that thing can, blah, 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 really fast. Well, how's that going to change the world? And, he likes to tell that story because, he was like, since then, I've tried to keep a very open mind about new technologies because I never know what the new technologies will bring. Because as, a brash 20-year-old, I sat there and said, the thing can add and subtract faster than me. It's not going to do anything to change the world. And sure enough, computers have changed everything. And the truth is that computers and robots totally changed the universe. The buildings being built by extrusion. I keep setting off Alexa. The buildings being built by extrusion are a great example. You need a computer to think that precisely, and you need the robot to do the thing. And so you ended up with, in the 1960s, people were building houses with hammers, and by the 2020s or the 2030s, they're just going to set a computer and a robot out there, not you. They're going to set a robot out there, and it'll just... And maybe the little robots will even put little interior walls in and then put the flooring down, and, So you just have a foreman sitting out there in a little hut, and he just watches to make sure that the robot doesn't run off its rails or something. And that brings me to a thought process that I'm having a lot of in my story and world building, which is, there will come a point where there will be more people than there are jobs. What do you do at that point? How do you set up the universe? How do you set up the world? That's a thought process that I've been having. And both of these cultures, the Commonwealth and the Unity, they both have effectively voluntary positions. You just join because that's what you want to do, or you don't have anything better to do. Yeah, I'm sure that they can't meet any code. I'm sure that they're difficult. I mean, if nothing else, you need to be able to do things like outlets every 6 feet and stuff like that. And so, there's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to happen. That's why I was saying you add the robots in, the robot arms, because then you could put a little box. And it is the idea behind UBI. The truth is, we're going to reach this point very soon, if not already, where UBI is going to be just something we all need to consider. There'll just be more people than there are jobs. There once was a time where everybody could have a job, but there's going to come a point where it's just not going to work, and I know that. And I can see that on the horizon as well. And most of the, Elon Musk sees that, and they're starting to see that as well. And so I've been, I've designed the Unity, at least, to be a meritocracy. They get a credit for every hour worked. And those credits are universal depending on whether you worked an hour as an artist or an hour as a doctor. And the world is adjusted to the point where, 60% of your credits goes towards living expenses and 40% goes towards, whatever you want to do in the economy. And that's acclimated that way. And I know that there's a lot of, but what's to encourage people to strive to go above and beyond? And the truth is, um, I have a firm belief that people will work even if they're not paid. I'm not paid for a lot of this. I don't. I mean, I do commissions and stuff like that. But the truth is, I have logged over 2020. I have certainly logged a full-time job's worth of work into this comic book, which nobody's paid me for. And so I have a firm belief that people will do work. They just, you need to find the work that drives them. And some people won't. Some people will spin out, and you have to be able to let people spin out and have time and figure out where they're supposed to go. And especially if you've got more people than you do jobs, there's nothing wrong with letting people spin out, because then they'll figure out where they're going. And I kind of needed to spin out a little to figure out where I was going. And I think a lot of people need to spin out to know where they're going, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, it's a thought. And all of this is top level, like, theoretical. I'm not trying to make a commentary about where we should be here in the United States or anything like that. I'm simply talking about where the unity is, and this is a fictional world, and it can be, and it's full of fictional people who will fictionally do, whatever it takes to make that work. So there's a lot of things I've been kind of pondering on this, how to make the world work. I've got a lot of things that I talk about in this comic that are experiments. The Commonwealth is a direct democracy. So who knows? Maybe it would work. Maybe it wouldn't work in real life, in practice. This is fiction. So, it's great to use these points in a fictional universe, because then you can think it through and go, I wonder, would this actually work? Would this not work? That kind of thing. So you'd have to make a great departure, though. I mean, we've yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff always worries me too. Disabled people, or our culture really took a turn in the 1800s, as far as a culture goes, towards people who pull levers and push buttons. As the Industrial Revolution took over, we had a lot more buttons to be pushed and levers to be pulled. And that was great. You had fewer people who needed to go out and pick the cotton, and more people who needed to work on the cotton gins that were picking the cotton for them. And so you needed to figure that out, and that gave point to that. But it also diminished certain aspects of our culture. Because, I mean, Donald, when you talk about disabled people, they're disabled to pull levers and push buttons. But that doesn't mean that they're disabled to write stories or draw. It depends on what there's still a whole lot of, or genealogy, or, there's a number of tasks and things that can be done that aren't pulling a lever or pushing a button. But our culture seems to have gotten kind of myopic in pulling levers and pushing buttons. If you can't pull a lever or push a button, sort of thing, which of course is silly. There's a lot of, that's the other thing I think about when I talk about, like, meritocracies. You've got to open up past the point of just seeing people who work on assembly lines on cars. You've got to look at it and go, there's value to people who, and that's the thing. See, elderly, I've got a my cousin, she's a cousin of mine. She was my mom's cousin. So they're the same level up there. I can't remember what that puts her at, second cousin or third cousin or something. But she's on Facebook all the time. She is the awesomest, like, genealogist. That's what she does. She spends all of the time going through and detailed researching branches of our family and putting things together and pieces like that. That is absolutely productive time. That's productive work she's doing. But we've, as a society, kind of see that, genealogy is a hobby. It's not. She's laying in hours and hours and hours on this. And she's pushing 80, So and she's happy as a clam. That's the thing. She enjoys it, she's happy, but it is still productive work. So we need to kind of change the way we see what is productivity, what is useful, and what is considered a viable member of society. And I feel like that's where we are here in this story. Everybody's useful. It doesn't matter whether you're doing genealogy or painting pictures or pulling levers. All of those things are useful equally. And that's, if I'm going to be making a utopian society, if it's going to be my utopian society, by George, wherever George is, by George, I mean to make it a utopian society. 1 hour is 1 hour. If you put in 1 hour as a computer tech, or if you put in 1 hour as an artist, you put in 1 hour as a genealogist, it's 1 hour. 1 hour is 1 hour. And I think that that's useful. And I also think that, whatever you do in life, that's a thing. I also probably think that spending some time in service of the society is useful, and then the society sort of owes you for it. If you were a teacher, if you were in the military, if you were a police officer, a medic, that's how you earn social credit, in some way or another. Put in 10 years everybody puts in 10 years to the service of the culture, and and then you're done. You don't need to do anything more than that. That seems fine. So I read about, speaking of elderly, I read about a fascinating idea that's happening in Canada, and I implemented that into our society. They take orphans and put them with the elderly in like a uniform home that works for both of them. It gives the elderly family to be with, and it gives the orphans family to be with. And sometimes, obviously, the orphans have to put up with the fact that their dad dies and they get a new dad every 5 years or whatever. But the truth is, you're only a kid for 18 years. And that's about the same time that you're in an elderly home, is roughly that same period of time, 10 to 15 years. So it gives both of them family. And I think that that's an extremely good idea. I like that idea a lot. It means that the elderly have somebody there with them, and somebody that cares, and somebody who can pick up stuff and move stuff around and do things. And the children have a family to be with as well. And I love that idea. So I'm going to go on ahead and just say that happens in the Unity as well. Because I really don't think that elderly are useless. And I think that that's actually a misnomer that kind of comes from a society where your worth is how much stock you own, or how many hours you put in at work. And I feel like that's missing a huge chunk of the value of humans and the value of people. a massive chunk of how valuable we can all be as people, because everybody's got value. Everybody has value. So I think that that's critical. It's like, how do you make a society where we actually legitimately value you for anything you can produce, even if you just make paper snowflakes? How do you make that? How do we value that as a society? And that's something to really kind of ponder. If you're going to have a futuristic society, where would we be? Where the people are, each individual person is valued and respected. And that's hard. Yes, a lot of our government's very old. But that's another thing. If you're expected to spend your first 10 usable years in service of society, politician is a service of society. So most of the people would be clumped in their 20s and 30s in politics, and it would be clumped up there. You'd have I feel like there are problems with capitalism as a structure being pretty cold. It's a cold system. And that's not, I'm not saying this like I don't believe in capitalism or anything like that. I actually am a very, very big proponent of capitalism. I think it's a great system if it works. But I feel like you need to have something to warm it up. You need some other force. Otherwise, capitalism is cold and brutal. Capitalism becomes Darwinistic very quick. If you can't make money, you're dead. And that's the way it goes. And the society is structured around what we as a group have kind of agreed is valuable. Art used to be valuable. Doing what I did used to be a very valuable, lucrative, productive thing. And it's not right now. And that's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but you know what I mean? Artists aren't valued necessarily, and once you run out of the ability to pull 40-hour weeks, you run out of value as well. It's gotten actually better, though, in the overview. Back in the turn of the 20th century, 1900s, early 1900s, your value was only really useful as long as you can put in 60 hours or 80-hour weeks. Then your value would go down as soon as you couldn't pull that. Well, that limits us to people under 40. And that's it. Anybody over 40 could not pull 80-hour weeks. They weren't as valuable. So it's gotten better. My father still works every day, and he's 79 this year. So he can do it. Some people can, but he does not pull 40-hour weeks anymore. He's into the 15 to 20-hour weeks. His value still needs to be, and actually, now that I've said that, if you have a meritocracy, maybe the makeup credits, maybe that's what it is. It's makeup credits. Like, if you put in 10 years in societal work, then when you're elderly, your 1 hour credit counts as 2. So if you work 20 hours, you're really working 40 hours as far as society sees. So it's a thing. I don't know. I mean, we got to think about all this stuff when you talk about utopias and things like that in a fictional universe. And you kind of talk about how this is all working out and where do they all live? How do you keep the elderly functional? I'm looking at the elderly people in my family, and they are still operating, doing things that they love. And I think because they're doing things that they love, even though, well, there isn't fiction. Everything exists in fiction. That's the beauty of it. So, I mean, truthfully, you know how this works. All storytellers do the same thing. I'm going to set up this large, elaborate structure of blocks and then knock it down. That's the point. So when I say I'm setting up a utopia, the whole point behind setting up the utopia is to knock it down. It's not a story if I'm telling the story about a perfect society. There has to be holes. But I can at least do my best to set it up as logically as possible in a way that could at least be seen and gone, that's interesting. Sort of the opposite of 1984, right? He sets up a dystopia. So that actually, well, that's exactly what happened, of course, in our story. That's a good question. If there's no true utopia, does that mean that there's no true dystopia either? That makes me wonder. You talk about like 1984 as a dystopia, it definitely is. But if you could have shades of dystopia, couldn't you have shades of utopia? All of these things make me wonder now. Now I'm really kind of thinking, if you've got that kind of thing. Right? It's too early. I've got coffee, man. I'm already loaded for bear. I have my iced coffee. I'm ready to go. So, when you do world building, this is all part of the world building here, is like thinking it all through. Thinking it all through. It's like, we've only got about 10 minutes left, and then I'm going to head on out. But these 3 days are just me kind of wrapping up pieces and bits and pieces of the story, and well, and I feel like Luna's comment was, it seems like some people are not happy unless they're subverting other people. And maybe I'm just wearing a tinfoil hat. But a lot of the things that I think about are like, people aren't born wrong. They're taught wrong. And they're either taught wrong by people, other people, or events that happen in their life. And what if you remove those events? What if the concept that people decided to go on was to pull roadblocks out from in front of people? Things like being in poverty, because that causes a lot of theft. Trying to deal with molestation and abuse and break those cycles, because we know that those are cycles, right? If you abuse a child, the child abuses their child, they abuse their child. If you can break those cycles, things like that. If you went after the roadblocks, we could bring the generic number of people who are good and doing the right things up. The general number. you get to the point where 80% of the people out there are just going through their lives. Other roadblocks, make it so that artists can make money and make a living. They make it so that genealogists can make a living, just doing genealogy. Researchers who just want to research for the sake of science. Make it so that they don't have to struggle for grants and things like that. If you take away the roadblocks of all of these things that make people do things against their better judgment, would you have a society that was better? That's the question. Who knows? I mean, do you want to dig deep into in Bezos's life to see if he was abused as a child? He could have been. See if he was robbed as a child? Could have been. Who knows? I mean, my feeling is those people tend to be somewhat sociopathic. Like they've got, with the exception of, like, say, Bill Gates, who does a lot of philanthropy in his own way. And even then, I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I mean, that's I feel like that's kind of a thing, right? Everybody. And maybe it is as simple as they lost touch somewhere along the line. Somewhere down the road, they just lost touch. And so what roadblocks would you pull from them? You go back in there and put them in contact with reality again. Make them work in a soup kitchen. I don't know. I'm giving ideas, But the idea is you pull all of that away. I don't know. I'd like to think that we wouldn't have war, but the truth of the matter is I think we would, especially the conflict between the Commonwealth and the Unity. This is over a very high concept that they're fighting. They're fighting over whether you should disrupt and destroy the universe or not by using magic, which is a high-level concept, which, by the way, the magic system in this story is not, wave your hands and say abracadabra. It's technology, high-level technology being used, but the high-level technology is damaging to the universe, or at least people are sure of it. And of course, the Commonwealth believes that as long as they're responsible, then they won't cause damage to the universe, and the Unity disagrees. So that's part of their conflict. And that's where we've got conflict between the two of them. But, yeah, I mean, my thought here is if you take roadblocks away, and you don't have to get roadblocks away from 100% of the populace, although you could at some point. But I feel like right now, especially today, we have a lot of people who believe that the majority of the people out there are just not doing well. They're bad. And I think that's wrong. I think you find out everybody has a story, and every story makes sense. And there is a point in everybody's life where they could make the choice to do the right thing or do the wrong thing. And some people were convinced that doing the wrong thing was what they needed to do. And if you can intervene at that convention point, at that point where they are convinced, I feel like we could probably make a lot of changes in society. So, something to think about. I don't know. I mean, what do I know? I'm just some guy writing a story. But that's where we are when you get into the fictional universe of the Commonwealth and the Unity. They are both moving ahead with different concepts. There are no prisons really per se. If you commit a crime, they go after what made you commit the crime and try to correct that aspect, instead of instead of just locking you away and throwing away the key. I'm sure that there will be a certain number of people whom you lock away and throw away the key. There will always be somebody. But I mean, it's like, you think about, like, Ted Bundy, right? I mean, that's a horrible human being. He's a terrible human being. But he was also seriously abused as a child. And he was, and you know, it's like, if you could intervene, would he have been the same person? Would he have been a threat? Who knows? I mean, all of that is part of what's great about being a storyteller, is I can take these thought processes, you know, and play sort of a what-if game. And then we can express it here in the story. What if? What do we think? How do we think this will play out, you know? It's just something to think about. I'm not trying to make a statement about today's world or today's culture or anything. I like the idea that in the future there's hope. We'll get over all of this crap. And I actually do fundamentally believe that everybody, all of us, have serious value. And it doesn't matter if you're elderly or disabled or never really got good at math. I'm really bad at math. All of us have a value. And I feel like somewhere somebody's going to stop saying, we value your bank account, and start saying, wait a minute, we value you. You know, you have value. I don't understand what you're doing, but that doesn't mean you don't have value. I think that when you look at, like, capitalism as a top-down, it's supposed to be a way for us to express your value, even if we don't understand it. And I think that it gets distorted, but I think at its core, that was what it was supposed to do. You worked an hour, I give you $1. And I don't know what you're doing or why, but then that dollar represents 1 hour of your work. And now you can go show someone else that you value their work. And then that way, I don't have to make an objective judgment on whether your sand paintings on the beach are a valuable thing or an unvaluable thing. I don't know, I'm thinking about a lot of this stuff. Here we come to the close of the year, and I'm totally on a philosophical bend. It's actually kind of an ongoing joke between Joe and me, as the Joe that we all love and chat with, the captain of the ship that we play, Star Trek Adventures. His ongoing joke is that I am a hopeless romantic when it comes to seeing people, and maybe I am, but I still think that that's important. I think that it's important to see that. It's important to know that. So the light's about to turn green here, and when it does, we're going to call the show for the day. I hope I didn't really make all you guys think that I'm some kind of lunatic that's gone crazy in the world or whatever. But I mean, really, the truth of the matter is, I'm just going to put it into the story. It doesn't, it's not. It's just a thing to think about. I'm pondering it. So that's the nature of the beast. So there we go. That's where we are. We've designed a Commonwealth cruiser today. That's been very useful as well. We kind of now know what the Commonwealth looks like as far as when we run into them in space. They're going to be a visually different thing. There goes my light, just turned green. So we are at 11 o'clock, and tomorrow I'll be back. I'm I don't know whether we're going to try to continue on with the Commonwealth Cruiser sketches. Whatever we're doing it lightly, just because I don't have my resources as I slowly get my office ready for 2021. So 2021, like I said, we're going to be working towards figuring out how to table in 2022. So not only are we going to be trying to make comics, so we'll have comics ready on the pages, but we're going to also make bookmarks and buttons and things, stuff, so that we can have them on the table whenever we go out to the table. Hey, George, good to see you, bud. How you doing? Want to come up here and say hi to everybody? You do. You just don't know it. You just don't know that you want to say hi to everybody. We're drawing. So George is up here to say hi. So it's George in George's world. He's a good cat. So, and George is like, hey, this isn't so bad. So, okay, guys. I appreciate all of you guys being here to chat with me. And I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. And I will see you all on the morrow. And maybe George will join me tomorrow. Who knows? George is who George is. Hey, Donald says hi. He's hi, George. Donald's your fan. You've got a fan. It's Donald. Donald's a big George fan. So, okie dokie. Well, on the George note, I'll let George go. He's like, I don't know why I'm here, but cat butt. Oh, noes. Well, Brent, if you're not here tomorrow, that's totally fine. I will see you next year. And we'll start 2021 in great style next week for you. And tomorrow I'll be here for the last show of the year. And I will see you all tomorrow and or next year. In the meantime, remember to keep your eyes on the stars. Goodbye, everybody.